So thank you so much, Natalie and Dani, for being here today. Natalie is the founder of Natalie's Trees and Bees, which is a community service-supported agriculture program, and Dani is the head of marketing at Good Eggs. Would you like to tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, so I have just a super quick intro to what Good Eggs is. I don't know how many people here have heard of Good Eggs or know Good Eggs. Amazing, so a little bit. So very quickly, what is Good Eggs? So Good Eggs is a new kind of grocery store. Basically, 5-ish years ago, we sort of sat around a room and asked ourselves, how can we build a new kind of grocery store that leverages like amazing local food and local producers all over the Bay Area? Right now, when we were starting, there were these sort of amazing producers making food, but no real way to get that food to customers because the traditional grocery store model doesn't really support it. So we sort of started asking this question, how can we help build that infrastructure? So what we ended up building over the past several years is a whole, basically an e-commerce grocery store that gets delivered directly to customers. So Good Eggs works with hundreds of producers. You, as a customer, order your groceries on our app, which you can see there, or the website, and then magically they arrive in a box in your kitchen and turn into that delicious dinner, and that all happens in a day. So if we order groceries right now, we could have them at home tonight for dinner.
Oh, technology.
Yeah. Oh, they get delivered in a van. Fun. And so on the customer side, it sort of looks like a typical e-commerce grocery experience. But what's happening on the back side is what we're super passionate about at Good Eggs, and it's all about how we're building this local network, or this network of local food producers. And so it's sort of like a visual collage of some of our amazing producers. We work with hundreds of them at this point. And so some fun stats about Good Eggs. So as a grocery store, Good Eggs is 80% local versus like at most 20% of a typical grocer. Actually, most typical conventional grocers are 1% local, if that. We have worked really hard to create what's called supply chain transparency. So this idea that if you come to Good Eggs and look at the Good Eggs website, you can buy whatever kind of, you can look at an apple and say like, where did this apple come from? What farm did it come from? Who are the people involved in actually like making and growing and picking that apple? Which is really incredible. If you think about when you go to a grocery store, you grab your apple, you grab your banana, you don't really have any idea where it came from or who was involved. So we feel really good about sort of making that all transparent and then making sure that we're working with people that we believe in, so we can sort of help support the people doing the right thing. And at this point now we're working with really hundreds of independent farmers and food makers, which is really fun because we get to go around all over California and visit these farms. For us, this is details, but we think about local as 250 miles around where we are. So we can talk maybe about what local means.
Yeah. So I'm on the other side. I'm truly local. And who knows where Gun High School is? So many of you know Gun High School. I'm right behind Gun School. I have about an acre of land, and when we came to the land, it was a very old land with very old trees, like maybe 60, 70, 80-year-old trees, and they were all kind of falling apart. They were part of the old orchard of Silicon Valley. There was a Santa Rosa plum and Blenheim apricot, and I thought, ooh, I would love to grow. And I'll show you my t-shirt because, who was here last workshop when we talked about superpowers? Is anybody here? See a few hands. Well, my superpower is growing things. Keep calm and plant a tree. I love to grow things. And so when we came to our land we rented for about 20 years in Palo Alto, and then we found that land. And when I came to that land, I started growing, and I asked my daughter, I have 2 daughters, my first daughter, what is the tree that you most like? And she said, what comes to your mind is probably like something very exotic, like maybe apricot or plum, but she wanted a persimmon tree because she said she loves the fresh persimmon, so we planted a persimmon tree for her. I love Blenheim apricots. We planted a Blenheim apricot. My husband liked apple. We planted a golden delicious apple. And my younger daughter, Jen, I can't remember, what tree did we plant for you? It was an avocado tree. It kind of morphed. Well, now I have about 65 trees, and I keep adding more trees because I love to plant things. I love to plant trees. And that's my superpower. And many of you talked about your superpowers. And so I love what I do. And so now I have a lot of harvest. And any farmer knows there is something called feast and famine. Feast is when the tree gives you everything it has for about 1, 2, 3 weeks, and then it's famine for the rest of the year. I will make jam with you today, but it's actually not from my land because there's very little harvest right now. If you go to the farmer's market, there's not much fruit available. There are lots of roots because it's very cold, it's in the earth, but the fruit will start coming out with citrus, of course. I made some citrus and I'll show it to you in a moment. But right now there's not much in terms of harvesting and bringing, so we're going to make a little bit more of a fun jam that I actually have to purchase the fruits. But all that I do is from my land, and it's from all my trees. And what I do is a small CSA. Who knows what a CSA stands for? It's, of course, a shortening for something longer. Does any child know CSA? I see a hand back there. Correct. And who could imagine what that means? Community supported agriculture. What could that mean? Yes, I see another hand.
Like, I don't know, when the neighborhoods and the locals are buying what's native and supporting.
You're absolutely right. And it goes back to other workshops where founders were saying that the first group, once you have a superpower, there's a little group around you, like your family, like your closest friends, who say, you know what, we believe in you. We want to really try to help you. Well, I started my CSA in 2015, and there were just 12 families who said, you know what, we like jam, we'll buy jam from you. And so this is how it started. It started with a recycled, 100% recycled bag. And in that bag, a CSA bag looks like, I have, here is a pomegranate jam from that was a December harvest. There is a quince jelly, this is from my quince trees, and it was kind of November, December-ish. And then the first harvest this year is Kishu mandarins, and so that's a Kishu mandarin. And then out of the quince, so the quince jelly is kind of see-through, the quince paste is all the fruit. Well, I have a quince jelly and a quince paste. And then I also have bees, and so the bees kind of made the last jar, and that is the honey jar. And so in a bag that I give to the family, this is a CSA bag. And right now I make 4 CSA bags per year, and that's all, because that's all the harvest I have. The families come to my house, they come to my house 4 times, and they come to my house the first Sunday between 5 and 6, and they come to my house and pick up their CSA bags and support me. And 2015 it was 12 families, in 2016 it was 24 families, in 2017 it was 36 families, and this year I just sent out the email, who would like jam? And some people say, you know what, I think I had enough jam. Others say, oh, give me more jam. They sign up for 2 bags. So it slowly grows, and that's community supported agriculture. And I look towards Dani and I think, you know, it's overwhelming sometimes to absorb all my food because I do everything out of what I have. I try to imagine new recipes with my feast, but sometimes I have too much, and then that's where you come in, and where you can help kind of pace it or distribute it to more people that I can't reach.
Exactly, and Good Eggs is like incredibly inspired by CSAs and sort of the people doing what you're doing exactly, and figuring out how do we actually build infrastructure so that more people can figure out how to sort of fit this kind of food into their lives, because it's delicious.
Yes.
And it's supporting sort of the growing food in the way that we want to support growing food.
Why does local farming matter?
So local farming matters for lots of reasons. There's this sort of thing that we don't think about, which is actually what this slide is about, which is that we don't really think about where our produce is coming from often. So when we pick up like conventional produce, like that apple that's kind of like perfect and shiny in the grocery store, the trip it's taken to get to that grocery store shelf is quite long and multi-conveyance. So we use this graphic at Good Eggs, but we think about like when that apple shows up on the grocery store shelf, it was harvested. Actually, like days is very generous here. It was probably harvested months and months ago in another country far away. It was picked before it was ripe, because if you think about picking a perfectly ripe piece of fruit, like that soft peach or that like perfectly crisp apple, it's gonna get like bruised and dented on its trip, on its like long journey from where it was picked to eventually come back to us. So it's picked before it's ripe. It's put on a ship and brought closer to us. It's then brought to a warehouse to be ripened, right? Because it wasn't ripened on the plant. So instead, we use technology to ripen it, which is cool and exciting that we know how to do that, but like a little bit scary because there's something called ethanol that's making our apple red instead of green. And then it goes on to another truck, and then it gets to the grocery store, and then eventually it gets to us. So in terms of just like all the things that apple has lost in that journey, like it's lost a lot of deliciousness, which is a bummer because apples are delicious, and we've all bitten into like a mealy apple that doesn't taste like anything, and that's a bummer. But it also loses nutrients, and some of the chemicals that are used to ripen it can be dangerous. So when you work with local farmers, you just cut out that entire process. Mm-hmm. So like when we think about how we work with farmers at Good Eggs, like we work with, like let's say, a farm we love, Say Hey Farms. They pick the produce. They literally that day or the next day take it in a truck to our warehouse in San Francisco, and then we put it on our truck and bring it to your house. And then you get to bite into an apple that actually tastes like an apple and has all of the like delicious vitamins in it, so it's also good for you. And so the whole experience is just much healthier and more delicious. And there's a whole sort of like sustainability and environmental conversation around that too. But I think just having healthy, delicious fruits and veggies in our life is enough reason that local farming is really important to me.
Yeah, one of the really scary stats that I learned a few years back is that for an apple, it's usually 18 months between when it's picked and when you actually eat it. So that's a year and a half, and that's really scary. So what do you do in marketing?
Yeah. So because Good Eggs is a small company, I do lots of things in marketing. So marketing is like, at a high level, how do we talk about Good Eggs? What are the stories that we tell? Where do we tell them? The story that I'm telling you today, like what we're doing right now, could be considered marketing. We have a blog. We have our vans driving around that are telling the Good Eggs story. So it's all about getting the word out. But then I also have this really fun part of my job at Good Eggs because we're in this new space where like nobody really knows how to do what we're doing. So a year ago, we sat around together and said like, I think that the thing that we really need to do to help our customers is make these meal kits. And so like sort of make a kit so it's really easy to make dinner so that like you can make dinner with your parents. And so then figuring out like what those should look like and who those were for and how do we talk about those became a big part of my job, which has been really fun over the past year. And a preview into what we're going to do later today, just make one of those meal kits.
So farming is a very male-dominated field. Can you tell me a little bit about the role that confidence plays in your success?
So I think going back in history, farming was very much a family affair, and I think, yes, nowadays there is much more big farming and we see much more male kind of figureheads, but I think, when I reach out to people, I'm always very much supported in all my endeavors, whether planting, whether building, whether I'm a one-woman show, so I kind of do everything on my own. And when I show up to places, in the building industry, everybody's like, well, where is your team and where are you guys? And I say, well, I'm the guy, or I'm, it's me. And everybody's always like, oh, well, let me help you. And I always get help. I mean, it's like really wonderful to be so embraced and supported in what I do. And I think, my jam says homemade with love. And I really believe that if you do something with love and you really give it everything you have, and I really do it for my family. I want my daughters to kind of grow up seeing all year long how I care for these trees, and then we go out and we harvest it together, and then for a very short time we have the fruits that we then eat, and then they're gone, but then we have kind of the harvest preserved in a jar for almost a year. It can, shelf life is for quite some time, but you open the jar and you think back of the apricot harvest that I have and that we had, and it is lovely to kind of live seasonally, but then also preserve the season and go on, and so I think it is both male and female that kind of participate. I'm a one-woman show, which is lovely, and I do get a lot of support from both female and male. I have lots of mentors who help me with, tree care. There's so much knowledge in farming. I think I'm kind of from the background of a teacher coming to this with kind of an awe and inspiration to create that really for my family as kind of a heritage farm, but it's also a sanctuary for the animals, it's a sanctuary for people to come. But then there is also this kind of bigger vision of creating and inspiring families who come to the farm and pick up their produce and really live with the season in mind, but also with supporting kind of the local environment. And
what advice do you have for young girls?
It kind of goes back to the superpower we talked about. All of you are really good doing something, if it is ballet, or if it is skateboarding, or if it is coding, or if it is communication or technology, and to really give this a try and work it and say, I'm good at this, I'm going to try it, but I'm going to fall and I'm going to get up. I'm trying farming, and it is so much fun, but it's also so much work, and I sometimes stumble and fall and realize that a tree will not make it in my environment, and I'll start again. And a learning curve in farming is 1 year. It takes me a season to learn that a tree doesn't like my space, or the spot that I have is too wet or too sunny or too windy, and so I think farming is multi-generational, and oftentimes it is kind of a whole group of men and women and children who participate in figuring out how this all works. But my advice is to really give it a try and just get your feet wet. And if you're really good at cooking, go talk to a cook. Yeah. If you're really good at math, go talk to a mathematician and give it a try and really get your feet wet. Get your hands dirty and try it out.
And what about you? What advice do you have for young girls?
I guess really similar. I think the thing that I realize now is follow all the threads that are interesting. This thing seems fun, you don't know where it's going, follow it and explore it. Something else totally unrelated seems fun and interesting, follow that and explore that. I never would have imagined that my interest in cooking and my interest in writing would end up leading to my career, but that is sort of what happened, and it's so fun and I love it every day, and those were just two separate threads that I pulled on for a long time. So have fun, follow the stuff that's fun, don't worry about sort of where it's going.
Awesome. So I think we have 2 parts to the activity. One part is we're making jam, and the other part is we have a pizza meal kit.
Yes.
So we're going to be making pizza. So if you just like to split up, we're making what kind of jam?
So my land right now is quite barren. So the season starts with citrus. I have the citrus jam in my CSA bag. So the citrus is kind of past on my land. The next fruit that will come is around end of May, beginning of June. That's the plums, and then we'll go into lots of stone fruit. But there's not really anything right now on my land that I could bring. But I was thinking, what could be really engaging for you? And I do a lot of travel, and when we traveled in Africa, we went to actually it was my parents who went to a village in Central Africa, and they went to the local market, and all they had was jam. It was banana jam, and my dad loved the banana jam. And when we came home, we kind of reversed engineer. We said, It tasted very much like ripe, delicious bananas, and it tasted, of course, like sugar, and it tasted like cinnamon. And so we tried this banana jam for many, many years to kind of figure out how it was done. And so today I'm going to make Central African banana jam with you, and it's all organic bananas. And as Dani was saying, they probably were brought from quite far away because they don't grow on my land, although I've tried many exotic tropical fruits. But that's one that will not grow on my land, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to keep trying to do that. So it's going to be banana jam, and also since I want you all to be safe, there's just forks, and we're going to mush it up with forks, and then we're all going to put it into the batch, and then I'm going to show you kind of the steps to follow. But jam making has to do with very hot water, because I'm sterilizing the jars, very hot puree of the fruit that I make added with sugar to preserve it, and so it's extremely hot. So I'll be behind kind of on the island. You will help me up front to kind of mix to mush the bananas and then mix it with the sugar, and then all of you will bring home a jar, and the jars are all right here. I also have, once you're done with your activity, little paper tabs that when you get your jam, you can decorate your paper, and then at the end, you know this was your jam that you participated making. We'll make more jam to add to this batch, and we didn't quite know how many you would be, but we will have enough jams for all of you. Some of them will still be hot, some of them will be cold, and then they will have your tab. So once you're done with your activity, you can come here and decorate your jam top to then bring home.
Awesome. And really quickly, does anyone have any questions that they would like to ask Dani or Natalie? Okay. Oh, yes.
Yeah, one question. Meal kits require quite a bit of packaging. How do you offset, or how do you calculate the cost and the effect of the packaging against the transportation typical?
Yeah, totally. It's a really good question. So we think about it a lot. I guess the short answer, because so there's a lot of companies that ship their meal kits, so they're actually like drop ship from like a warehouse far away. And whenever you're shipping food, there's really a lot of packaging involved. And that's like, there's all the cold packaging and sort of protective layers, and actually like every item is wrapped individually, so there's really a lot of packaging. So the cool thing about Good Eggs is because we're not shipping anything, everything is local, the meal kit just gets packed with your groceries. So there's the box, and there's like your biodegradable bag, but there's not all of the additional packaging that is typical that we think of when we think of meal kits. That said, we actually don't feel great even about our situation now, even though it's much better than a typical meal kit. So we are exploring ways to actually have like a returnable box program, but we haven't figured it out yet.
Awesome. Any other girls have questions? No? Then let's make jam and pizza.
So can we see a show of hand? Who would like to make jam? Because if it's about half and half, then I think it's about half. If those who would like to make jam can go and meet around the kitchen area, and then those who would like to make pizza and come outside, then I think you can. Yeah, I can see that it's starting to brown a little bit. So this is another 500 grams, and another 500. You already start smelling the sugar a little bit.
Yeah.
And another 500. So now we have 2 kilos of fruit and 2 kilos of sugar. So it's always 1 to 1. So it's 1 amount of fruit and 1 amount of sugar, and then the pectin. Now, for every dish you make, I have a recipe, so I'll show you my recipe. Every time I kind of take another piece of paper and write it down, I just kind of sketch it quickly and add. Sometimes I need more, sometimes less, and then I just scratch out my ingredients and add more. It also asks for lemon, and the lemon has been squeezed by several of you, and it says here I need